Hey, loves, how are you? Today's day 7, and we're going to talk about the purification process of transformation. And I'm going to take the approach of the divine counterpart, twin flame type of connection purification process. But it also feels very important to acknowledge that as we're doing the Inner Union series, this information is appropriate and applicable to anyone going through any sort of evolution, awakening, ascension, growth journey. Okay. Because we're all here going through this evolutionary process of purifying out the old information and stepping more and more into more of who we are authentically as humans and as souls. Okay. So the purification process has different layers to it. And today we're going to talk about those. But I'm going to start out, like I said, with that divine counterpart kind of twin flame initiation process. But for those of you that aren't here for that, I still want you to stay and pay attention to how you can apply this to yourself and to your relationships. Because in my experience, the lessons and the information that comes from these types of connections is actually truly meant to help the whole planet. And so, however you resonate or however you choose to connect, I would just like you to come into it with an open mind around receiving the benefits and the messages and the love within this process. Okay. And for all of you who are new here, welcome. I'm so very happy to have you here with us. So, initially, when these divine counterpart energies come together, there begins this process of a soul merging that's known as helioscamos. And through this merging process, whether sometimes it happens in the physical world where they meet, but sometimes it can happen even in the energetic fields if they haven't connected face to face in the physical world. And the energies merge together in a big, huge download of energetic exchange happens of information, of keys, of codes. But also, there is this process that goes into the love bubble phase where the counterparts experience each other in their true core soul energy and frequency and potential. And so they see one another with those bubble love energies, kind of like rose colored glasses, but not because it's being done in a way that is being avoidant. It's actually part of this process of realigning and remembering who we actually are at a soul level. So when they come together and experience that remembrance of who they actually are at a soul level, and feeling this gorgeous, divine, unconditional, loving energy, they get to experience a time of what their potential truly is as individuals and as potential partners or divine counterparts, masculine and feminine, however that applies for you. Okay. This phase goes on for a while. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Oftentimes, it's much more than any of us could have experienced or believed was possible. And then there is the bursting of the bubble of, and what's happening during this process is we're starting to bring up into our systems all of the places and spaces where we weren't actually able to sustain those unconditionally loving frequencies for ourselves, first and foremost, but then for others. So this is the phase where you usually go into some form of physical world separation, and usually the feminine goes into a form of the dark night of the soul. And this is where the purification process begins, while the masculine is holding space on the other side, depending on what your soul's contracted to do. But this kind of seems to be the general theme. Now, I feel like I could go into a video on Helios, Gamos, Love Bubble Phase, Bursting the Bubble, Dark Night of the Soul. Those could all be their own topics. So we're just going to touch on those today. But they're important leading up to the purification process, because when you're in that so-called dark night of the soul, which is the collapsing of mostly pretty much everything that you've ever known. And it feels exceedingly overwhelming because you're going through an extreme loss, and it's mirroring back to that core soul wound, which I did a video on earlier this week. So you're not just experiencing that current moment separation and all of the realization of all the ways you're having trauma in your system and not able to sustain love. It's also bringing up all of the information and energy from the original core separation and wound from our counterpart, but also from our own highest connection to source. And so there is a very deep sense of isolation and pain that can come from this process. But this is the crux of where the purification process begins. And any of you who have gone through this process, you know that it's so uncomfortable that it actually kind of puts you in this position where you're forced to do the work because you're not able to shut down the connection. You're not able to shut down the love. And you're also not able to shut down the pain and the process of this transformation. But it seems to be that the deep, true core soul unconditional love that is present and having that experience during the love bubble phase is what actually catapults us into this very, very deep soul work and purification, which I believe if we've gone through this or are going through it, it's because our souls chose to go through this purification to support ourselves and our souls, but as well as bring new codes and keys and purified information to the rest of the planet. So any and all of you going through any form of a purification transformation process, whether it was catapulted or started by a deep counterpart relationship, love bubble experience, or any other type of moment that created a sense of instability or deep change in your life. I mean, some people experience this during a divorce or a job change or the loss of a loved one or any type of traumatic sort of event that can catapult us into deep change within ourselves and in our lives. Okay. So this purification process is spiritual, physical, and emotional. And many of us really start in those very spiritual and emotional realms because of how we're catapulted into this experience. And I would say probably for those of you, like I said, the feminines tend to go through it first, whether you're masculine or feminine, but if you're the one experiencing it initially, you're working more likely in your feminine energies at that time. Okay, because it could be for a multitude of reasons. Even if you're a man and you're going through it, it could be that you were in a place of a different type of spiritual evolution on your journey and you were ready to take that next step in a different type of way. So this really doesn't have to do with sex per se. It's really about the energies that you're working in. Okay. So some of the big parts of this purification process are clearing out, like I said, those places and spaces where you've not been loving yourself unconditionally. And it can be confusing at times when you first go into it because you might have thought that you were. And then this situation and this experience exposes all of the places and spaces where you've been running or hiding or walling or freezing. And you start to realize how much more there actually is for you to work through. But this is not meant as a punishment. It's meant because you're some of the strongest souls that came here and agreed to not only transmute these for yourselves and your connection and love, true love energies on this planet, but you're doing it for your ancestors, for the future generations, for past life experiences. And there are even many of you who are here working in cosmic ancestral lineage energies. When I was out for my walk this morning, I heard purifying ancient bloodlines. Okay, there is some very deep, beautiful, gorgeous purification work happening on this planet because there's so many of us doing this work, each in our own way. Okay, so you go through this process of maybe even you've had during this process, you were intuitive and you felt really connected and you kind of were, really understanding things. And then you got catapulted into this experience and you feel like you're starting all over again. Well, what's happening is now you've opened to way more of yourself. And so you're going into a new form of self mastery and you are learning to master your human and your higher self, learning to master your emotions, not through freezing them or stuffing them or suppressing them, but actually by feeling them, neutralizing them, and being able to hold a state of non-attachment with them. Okay. And this isn't every and all moment that we're always neutral. It's about experiencing things or experiencing triggers and still being able to see it for what it is and strengthening our muscles so that we can master and move into a state of self-mastery with our emotions and with these experiences. Okay. It also teaches us in a physical level how to begin to set energetic boundaries in our physical world. It also helps us set energetic boundaries in the spiritual world. We're catapulted into, many of us, this realization where we may have agreed to things or past contracts or old bindings or oaths in this life or other lives that we did not realize we were playing out. So you may find those and you're detoxifying and puring and balancing those out. Sometimes they're known as karmic contracts. There's a lot that goes into this purification process. Like I said, I could probably do a video on each one of these. If that's something you think you guys would like, drop it in the comments. Of course, we would space it out over time so you could absorb the information and allow it to be most supportive for you. I know that many of you have been doing this work, but I find it helpful sometimes to even listen to someone else speak about it or share their perspective because we're gaining new perspectives and new codes. And I appreciate so much when you share and you feel guided to share in the comments because you're also now sharing your experience and your codes and bringing that reciprocity to the channel and to the planet. And I just appreciate and honor that and respect that so much. So thank you for those of you who feel guided and comfortable doing that. It is appreciated. Okay, so this process can go on for quite a while, but there is another process that I want to speak about that maybe sometimes gets overlooked, or the realization of the need for the physical body purification maybe doesn't get as much attention that it truly deserves. Okay. And this came to my realization because I was a person already that was pretty healthy. I ate well, I take pretty good care of myself. But through this process, I had to purify at a whole deeper level than I ever even imagined was necessary. And what happened was through this process of working in the energetic and emotional and spiritual fields, I was working to unravel and dissolve those processes as they came up because, that's what I'm actually really good at, that transmuting of the old energies, dissolving, unraveling, right? And dropping in the energetic results, learning to embody these things. But it came to a point where I had unraveled and cleared out so much information that my physical body, even though I was putting nutritious and good things into it, it wasn't responding in kind or in a way that would have been an appropriate response. And I had to start addressing this with a person that I work with. She's amazing. And So we started to dive deeper into what was going on with me physically. And at first, I was a bit overwhelmed. But then I realized that it actually made perfect sense that my body needed a new level of physical support. Because as we're going through these processes of unraveling ancestral patterns, collective patterns, personal trauma, past life patterns, oaths, findings, false marriages, you name it. We're working on cosmic lineage conflicts. That is a lot. And with all of those things that we're working on, there was systems or energies set in place in our physical bodies that we weren't even aware of. Any place in the past where we or our ancestors dissociated, suppressed, where inversions came into the system, what happened is other energies came into our bodies. And these can be any types of energies that are not in homeostasis with our physical body. It could be viruses, bacterias, heavy metals, parasites. But when I've worked with them energetically, what I've discovered is they all have a parasitic type of energy where if they're not in a balanced homeostasis, they're actually pulling and draining one's energy. Okay, number one. Number two, they're beyond just draining and using your life force, they're actually also a totally different vibration than your true core soul frequency. And so you can be clearing information spiritually and emotionally all day long, but if you're not physically detoxing the energies that are in your system, those frequencies are still running in the background, and the frequencies of the parasitic energies are actually co-creating your experience with you. And so if you're working on all of those things and finding you're still just not quite getting where you want to go, or it's not working fast enough, and or you find you've worked on emotional pockets over and over again and they keep coming back, I discovered that was actually the parasitic energies in my system holding the old emotional states in place. I'm talking about anxiety, depression, sadness, fear. They were being held in place by these other energies in the system. Okay. And this isn't just with me. I've seen it with several clients and others that I work with, that as they're going through this level of the purification process, they're also finding it easier to neutralize the emotions and to feel stronger, not just in the physical body, but in their energetic body and in the ability to manifest and sustain those manifestations in the physical world. So all of these pieces are very important. But if you are finding it's a little bit of a struggle or seems kind of like a back and forth to actually fully manifesting and sustaining things in your physical world in the way that you know you're capable of, you may want to really look into this physical purification portion. No matter how healthy you are, no matter how awesome you eat and care for yourself, if you're finding those creations aren't quite manifesting, this may be a key piece for you. Okay. And a bunch of you guys have asked, yes, I do offer one-on-one sessions. I have a basic, if you're not sure what you're really needing, session, you can book that. Or those of you who want to go into these really deeper pockets and layers and have some support, we work directly with your higher self in all situations. But I also have like a soul retrieval type of session. So I'll drop that in the comments for you. But the point being is that if you were feeling that you're stuck in that building physical world process of fully grounding into and more fully embodying the things that you've been dreaming of, and you're not quite sure what it is, then you may want to look into this physical purification portion. I've actually been talking with my friend about this and coming up with a program because we find that our work works really well together. So I would like to bring her on the channel at some point to speak about some of these processes and maybe we'll come up with some type of package or class or group that you guys can partake in if you're interested in that. Because I think especially for all of us, but I'm going to speak to the feminines because our specialty does tend to be in those higher chakras, in the higher intuitive spiritual realms, right? And the masculines are more in the physical, lower chakras, physical world building. But as we're coming into inner union, no matter whether we identify as masculine or feminine, we are learning to work in all of those. So for the feminines that have been working in the higher energies, a big part of our purpose is embodying those higher energies down into the lower chakras, down into our physical bodies, and down into the earth, where we're grounding and actively co-creating and building parts of these new templates, right, with our internal masculine and feminine energies. And for the masculines that are going through this, that are really usually more oriented to the physical world, as you're learning to work with your intuition and your emotional mastery and different things like that as well, you're also going to want to support the body, right? Because that is a big part of what you're going through as well. I feel like there's something there, right there. So I feel like there's a side video that may come out specifically for the masculines, or maybe for the masculines and the feminines. But I can feel that. I'm sensing that there isn't a proper amount of support for the masculines in this part of the journey of the purification. I know we have some masculines here, so if that feels correct to you, I would love to hear from you in the comments, or you can shoot me an email. I would love to hear your feedback. And or if we have masculines who have gone through the purification process, I would love to hear from you and your experiences and insights, because although I'm sure there's commonality, we're very well aware that the masculines experience things much differently than the feminines. And it's very important to me to honor that there's overlap, but that the experiences will tend to be different. So give me 1 second with that, because I feel like something wants to come through right now. I feel like the masculines, they're showing me that it is similar in that their world starts to shift, or the way that they did things starts to shift. It might not be as strong of an internal world hermiting that the feminines go through, but they do go through their own form of it, is what they're showing me. And so for the masculines, however your purification process happens, it feels important to acknowledge all of the pieces of that as well. And it's kind of coming to me that maybe it even comes in the reverse of what I've been speaking about. Perhaps you move into more of a physical purification first, and then that supports your ability to process and master the emotions, and clearing up the emotions makes it a bit easier to feel tapped into your intuition and inner knowing. And as I'm saying it, I can feel the difference in my own system of how my inner masculine and feminine energies process things differently, and how they go hand in hand, because I actually in the reverse did experience that. Because as soon as I started purifying the body, I was able to process the emotions in a whole new way. So as I'm sitting here in real time getting this message, I can confirm it for you from an inner union perspective. Okay. I'm very excited about this topic because there's quite a bit that goes into it, but it's the main core of so much of this work and this journey. So it's kind of like an ongoing purification process that's really intended to support you in becoming your more and true, embodied, authentic, gorgeous self. Okay. So if you're in it, if you feel like you've been in it for a while, it's all okay. It's beautiful. It's the process. We're in it. I've been going on this journey for quite some time, and I'm definitely still in some of these processes. And I'm okay with that. I embrace it because I understand that that is what we are doing on the planet right now. We're here clearing out the old, dropping in the new, right? And we've made tremendous amounts of progress, especially over the last 3 or 4 years, which is why we're in this more calibrated, stabilized state to be able to talk about these topics in this depth. Okay. Because so many of us have been working together in the energetics, in the fields across the planet, whether we know each other or are aware of each other. I believe that we are co-creating unity consciousness together, one step at a time from the inside out. All right, loves. I'm so grateful to be here with you. I hope that you're enjoying this Inner Union series. As always, I would absolutely love to hear from you. For those of you who are new to the channel, thank you for subscribing. Those of you that have been with me, I always appreciate you so very much. And if you're new here, we would love to have you join us if you feel resonance with the energy here. I love you so very much. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye.